more with you how important it is that this be an open proceeding, and I'm very, very proud that this is the second year in a row that we've had open proceedings in the Readiness Subcommittee. Given what's at stake, I think that the American people deserve to know what is happening, deserve to know what decisions we are making, and we have oversight in this committee of over $162 billion of the $525 billion requested by the President this year. And so I couldn't agree with you. Thank you so much for pushing this issue. And I, too, hope that the overall Armed Services Committee, that when we have the full markup, will be open for the American people to see what we're doing. And I think that that's very important. I believe we've crafted a mark that addresses the wide range of critical needs for the Department of Defense. And while we've also accomplished efficiencies and savings to taxpayer dollars, again, while meeting our national security needs, I would like to highlight a few of the components of this bill that I think are important. I'm very pleased that the mark contains a provision to repeal the controversial language related to military depots and shipyards that threaten to upset the delicate balance in the defense industrial base between the public and private workload. I think this public-private balance in our depots was working, and I believe that last year's change to the depot language was largely a solution in search of a problem. I strongly urge that we sustain this repeal in conference to ensure that it is signed into law. I'm also encouraged to see that the mark includes the requirement for the Department to achieve audit readiness for the Statement of Budgetary Resources by 2014. To distinguish between necessary defense budget cuts and cuts that would harm our troops and damage military readiness, we must have reliable financial data and effective business processes and systems in place. And for this reason, last year I authored and introduced an amendment to the Defense Authorization Act that would have required the Pentagon to complete a full statement of budgetary resources by 2014. I'm very pleased that this year it's being included in this mark. I'm also pleased that the mark does not authorize, as the chairperson mentioned, the 2 additional base realignment and closure rounds that were requested by the Department. As I have said, and as the chair discussed, I do not believe we can justify spending tens of billions of dollars within the Pentagon budget in the short term to fund more BRAC rounds for returns that may take decades to materialize, especially when we're in a situation when details regarding defense sequestration, overseas force posture, and the size of our forces, there are many questions that need to be addressed, not to mention the prior GAO reports and the savings and questions that have been raised as a result of the savings from BRAC from the prior 2005 round. I am pleased that the mark requires the Department to review the allocation system for facility sustainment, restoration, and modernization funding to ensure parity in the distribution of funds among the military departments and adequate adjustments for unique facility requirements, including joint bases and historic preservation. Currently, some bases have a large quantity of historic buildings on the National Registry of Historic Places that are critical to the base's operations. The presence of these buildings on the registry requires the respective bases to maintain these buildings at a higher and costly standard, yet the Department frequently does not appear to provide sufficient funding to match these requirements. This reporting requirement in the mark will help address this ongoing problem. Madam Chair, it has been a pleasure working with you over the last year and a half, and I want to thank you for working with me to also include my Maritime Prepositioning Force Amendment in the mark. As you know, the Navy proposes eliminating 1 of 3 squadrons that are critical to Marine Corps readiness. This step will slow the Marine Corps' response to future contingencies in the Mediterranean region, North Africa, and West Africa, including countries like Syria, Egypt, Libya, and others. Before we allow the Navy to move forward with this plan to eliminate the Maritime Squadron, which could incur additional risk, we must ensure that we understand the risks and assess the Department's risk mitigation strategies. Madam Chair, I also want to thank you for including my Overseas Military Cemeteries Amendment. When the department closes bases overseas that have base cemeteries, it's important that the department conduct the necessary coordination with other federal agencies or private entities to ensure that the graves of those who have served our country receive the proper maintenance and are treated with dignity and respect. And I want to thank Senator Begich for working with me on this issue. This amendment will help ensure we never repeat the circumstances that occurred in 1991 at the Clark Air Force Base and Clark Veterans Cemetery. Most importantly, it is the preeminent purpose of this subcommittee to ensure Congress and the American people understand the specific risk that defense sequestration would incur to our warfighters and to our country. So I want to raise it today because I believe it is the elephant in the room when it comes to our national security. Secretary Panetta has described defense sequestration cuts as catastrophic, inflicting severe damage to our national defense for generations, and he compared the cuts to shooting ourselves in the head. The Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps testified in our hearing that potential manpower cuts from budget sequestration would result in the Marine Corps, and I quote, would not have adequate capabilities and capacities to meet a single major contingency operation. Given these compelling statements from our military leaders, I'm deeply concerned that Congress has not yet mustered the courage to make the tough decisions we need to make to avoid this serious risk to our national security. We cannot afford to wait until December to address these looming cuts. It's too late to address defense sequestration during the lame duck session, because at that point, many of our members of our defense industrial base will already had to make the decisions to start implementing layoffs and notifying employees of layoffs. And in addition, many of the subcontractors that they rely on are sole source providers. Some of them are already feeling the pressure, and some have already gone out of business. And we cannot afford to kick this can till the lame duck session. So it is my hope that not only our members of this committee, but the entire Senate will take this issue up now as opposed to waiting till December. Finally, I want to join you in expressing our appreciation, my appreciation to the members of the committee, the professional staff, and the staff assistants. I especially want to thank your staff, Peter, Jay, John, Russ, Maggie, and Jason, for their support and cooperation with my staff. And again, Madam Chair, I thank you for the way you've conducted this committee, and I've appreciated the opportunity to work with you on this mark, and I look forward to moving this mark quickly to the full committee. Thank you.